Hello, Java Challenger. I'm very happy that I have here the youngest guest, Cassandra, who is only 21 years old and she accomplished so many amazing things. She is a keynote speaker. She recently released a book about raising young coders. And
Let me just
she
hold it
also,
up for a second. This is the Raising Young Coders book, which I just wrote.
yeah, she's even showing us her amazing book. So thanks, Cassandra, for that. And she also hosts a podcast about the topic of raising young coder. And she's a children's workshop instructor and a computer science student. She's been traveling around the world and teaches kids how to code in conferences such as DevOps for Kids, KubeCon, JFocus, JCreate, DevOps Morocco. So she has a lot to share with us here. And she also lives in Belmont, California. So Cassandra, you're very welcome to our podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here today. You just introduced everything about myself, so I guess that's covered.
Thank you so much. Okay, so my first question is usual, Cassandra, is about your career. So can you walk me through your career journey, please?
Yeah, for me, career means something a little different than other people. Since I'm still in college studying computer science, I've about a little under a year left. So I would say my career actually started when I was 13 years old. So have been teaching kids workshops since I was 13. So I think that's one of my big career accomplishments. I teach Raspberry Pi kids workshops, basically teaching kids how to do some coding and embedded board wiring with breadboards.
Mm-hmm.
And other things I've done in my career is more recently, last year, I wrote a book called Fippy's AI Friend before the new one I just wrote. And I wrote that for CNCF Kids Day at KubeCon. And because of that book, I've also been giving sessions at international conferences. So it's like a talk where I inspire parents how to get their kids inspired into technology. And I've also given two keynotes since then, and now I've written my new book. So those are just some of my career highlights.
Amazing. That's a lot. That's a lot. How was the experience of learning Raspberry Pi and how do you teach kids about the concepts and the foundations?
For the Raspberry Pi Kids workshop, we take like a Raspberry Pi and it's attached to a mini touchscreen. It's really convenient. And the first version of the Raspberry Pi workshop, we ran a game called Mary Had a Little Lambdas. So I guess we really teach programming by playing a game first. The first step really is to just get kids interested. So in the Mary Had a Little Lambdas game, it's a pixel art game, and then you'd run around with your character and you'd gather the sheep on screen. And the mission of the workshop, there wasn't a way to win the game, but we encouraged kids to change the color of the sheep and different things on screen, which is really easy. You can also change the quantity of chickens. And I'm using we in this context because originally my dad was teaching the workshop and I would just help out on the side, passing out hardware. So this was like maybe I was 11 at the time when I was just helping him out. For the workshop itself, actually, this version of the workshop didn't have sensors, but I think we have been we have made a lot of versions of the Raspberry Pi Kids workshop since. So the next version of that workshop is called Zombie Time, and it's basically the same game engine. The game engine is all written in JavaFX because my dad wrote books on JavaFX. He's that guy. So this Zombie Time game, I actually helped develop the game a little bit. So I drew the graphics for the zombie girl you control. I just took an image and colored the girl's skin green. I was probably like 15 at the time. But the new thing we did for that workshop is we use breadboards and wires and sensors. So we had a light sensor, a button, and accelerometer. So we would use these different sensors to control what happens in game. And the sensors, like, to make them work, the kids have to program it themselves. So I think in this game specifically, we'd have you control your character, the zombie girl, in the game, and then after 10 seconds, you just light on fire and it's a game over. So, like, we have kids play a game, but I think the motivator for getting kids to actually listen to me is they can't progress any further. So, after that, I would teach them how to wire a button to the game, and then again, I would ask them to just try the game as is, but the button won't do anything unless you code it. With this workshop, I have kids coding in Nano. It's like the most simplified IDE there is. That I would have them go through the game's code and add in just one line, which I asked them to type. So I think for this one, it would be like button press. And then kids would be really happy because when they press the button, they burrow underground and don't die.
And how old are them?
The kids are like, the youngest would be 7, but that's a bit young. Probably
How
9 is more normal.
how do you manage to teach them such a young age?
Some of the kids were actually 16, so at the time, I was teaching kids who were older than me too. I mean, they didn't seem young to me. I was young, and I just taught them. If they got stuck on a problem, I would help them. And I think I had the kids work in pairs, which works out better for a workshop like that, because there's a coding part and wiring part, so kids can take turns. And when their partner gets stuck, they can ask each other for help. The problem when you don't have kids working together is they start raising their hand, and then their brain turns off because they want you to solve the problem for them. So I think that worked for me. I try to help them as little as possible. I want them to solve it themselves.
Yeah, because that's the only way for them to learn. If they always rely on you for the answer, they won't learn anything.
Yeah, I think I have been to a lot of kids' workshops myself. Like I used to attend kids' workshops at DevBox for Kids in the Bay Area, and I've seen a lot of what workshops worked and what workshops didn't work. It's harder to think of workshops that worked, honestly. But one of the workshops which I tried was a Minecraft modding workshop. What kid doesn't like Minecraft? It's a very successful workshop because they get so many registrations. But when I was in that class myself, I found that the problem is just too hard because you bring your own laptop and then for the first 30 minutes or hour, they're just trying to set up the IDE on your laptop. So it ended up being a Minecraft playing session.
Oh no.
I guess for a more successful workshop, I actually did attend a paper circuits workshop where it was mostly an art class. But even so, there wasn't programming involved. The important part is the problem is easy. It's really easy to put copper wires on the paper and to make the LEDs light up. So because you can get success easily, then you're likely to be creative and design your own projects. And at the time, I was actually going to workshops with one of my childhood friends. So I think that helped me a lot to have a friend there because it made it a fun activity. And I'm sure there was an issue with gender diversity and ratio in those workshops, but because I had my friend there, it didn't matter to me if there were boys in the class because I was just there to hang out.
Interesting. So you mentioned some of the facts that make a workshop good or bad. What else, in your opinion, makes a workshop not efficient?
Earlier, I was saying that if the workshop is too hard, then you spend most of the time troubleshooting. Another thing is sometimes having too many volunteers can hurt because the kids are getting too much help. And if they get help for the first step, it's fine. The second step, fine. As you get further, they can't even do it themselves anymore because they had someone else do it for them. And I think this also applies to like if kids bring their parents and their parent is sitting in the workshop with them. I mean, it really depends on the parent's personality, whether it works out or not. but sometimes parents think they can do the workshop better than their child, or maybe the child themselves asks for too much help. I think still for younger kids, it's good to have a parent because they do need that help. And if you're like 7, then getting good results and seeing a working project is more important than struggling and failing and now you don't like tech.
Oh, that's very interesting. And do you educate the parents on this fine line where
I
they have to help and they don't have or they can't help?
honestly like a lot of parents, if their kid is old enough, they might leave the room after a while out of pure boredom. And I think the parents with younger children usually stay. But I would say this is usually less in my control. It's more up to the people that organize the event, whether they allow parents or not.
Yeah, but it might also demotivate if the kid is too young. If they fail, as I said, it might be frustrating for them. They don't get this help.
Yeah, so I
As
think in that case you need the parent. Or sometimes by having kids work in pairs, the slightly older kid will solve the hard problems.
so, in your opinion, for a workshop to work, they have to be able to do the work on their own.
Yeah, either on their own or with someone else of similar age. Because the point of this workshop is not to make them master Java programmers. I just want to show them that technology can be fun. And if they want to do more and actually learn how to program, they honestly have to go home and get help from their parents or take classes on it. But it's really about the start. The point is to motivate them. If they have a bad experience, then that is basically the end of their tech career.
So yeah, that's why it's so crucial when they are very young. They have to do everything in their control to succeed.
Yeah, but there's also a balance. Workshops can be too easy, and then they'll find it boring.
Okay, so you have to find this fine balance, basically the sweet spot, like not so easy and not so hard.
I think it's harder to control this in a workshop environment. I do the best I can to try to teach everyone, but usually they're all of different skill levels. And something else for workshops, I've taught workshops at a lot of international conferences and also locally. I've found I enjoy teaching workshops more when rather than the parents bringing the kids in, they bus in kids from a school because I think when parents bring their kids in, they're more likely to bring their sons. But if it's a school program, then the kids feel obligated to sign up. It's no effort for the parents. It just somehow works out that way that more girls get involved.
But don't they feel like, oh, it's mandatory. I don't want to do that.
Think that I'm not sure if this is actually practical advice for parents, but more just things I've noticed. Because I've taught kids workshops at Black Girls Code before. It was in Oakland, and I guess in that scenario, the parents did bring their kids in, but they were all of a similar skill level, and many of the girls haven't actually used a keyboard before. That's one of the workshops I always remember because I watched the kids and going from not touched a keyboard to writing their first line of code. It's really something.
Very good. And Cassandra, tell me more about what first sparked your interest in software development and also about your interest to teach young coders, teach young kids how to code.
This is stuff from like when I was really young, but I mean,
You're
I've
still very
always
young.
like really young, like 10 and younger. But I live in this house with my parents. So a lot of things at that age are my parents' influence. Something unique to me is my dad. He's a technologist and I feel like he's always trying to make technology fun, not just for me, but I guess himself too. So he used to run Java 1 and he would make a lot of the demos for Java 1. It looked like a lot of fun because One time he bought like a Doctor Strange costume because he said he had to go on stage with it. And I also watched him build a Lego Duke, and the base of the Duke is the Lego Mindstorms EV3 set. So he was trying to build I forget what it's called, but it balances on two wheels. And he built the Duke completely out of Lego bricks. He
Wow.
just bought huge bags of Legos from Amazon and just started building.
Wow, that's amazing.
And there's a lot of things in this house. We got 3D printers pretty early on. I wasn't making 3D models, but just watching the printer print, it's fascinating. And I could pick projects from Thingiverse that I wanted to build. And I think I also saw my dad using Blender and some 3D programs to build his own projects. Some of them might have been for his books. Oh, and something else which definitely has had an influence on me is I built my first computer when I was like probably 4 years old.
Wow.
We just bought the computer parts, and I honestly might have been more of my dad putting it together and me just screwing it in. But I was involved and I saw where all the parts went, and that helped me to connect like the screen I see and like the actual computer and the components. And he would explain that there's a graphics card, and basically how much money you pay is how good the graphics is. You can buy higher RAM and SSD. And that was just my first computer. Like, probably every few years, we would build a computer either for my dad or myself. And each time we build it, I'm a little older. So I would take on more and more of the building process. Like the last computer I built, I basically put in all the parts myself and just did it with a little bit of my dad's supervision. Oh, and I would also watch him and shop for computer parts. So it's honestly one of the best ways to learn computers.
Is by building them.
Yeah,
And did you build a desktop?
I assume it's a desktop computer. I have a desk with monitors.
No, not a laptop, I mean
Yeah, it's a desktop.
desktop. Okay, awesome. Very good. What is the configuration? What is the setup of your desktop?
Right now, I think I have a 2040 Ti graphics card. 5 years ago, that was top of the line, but maybe it's a little overdue now. I think I recently upgraded the RAM. I don't know, I'm pretty bad with numbers and actually remembering what I did. But for my desk, my setup is I have my main monitor, and I have another monitor about the same size to the left. And I've had this dual monitor setup like for extremely long time. Probably even when I was like 10, I was still using two monitors, which now that I think about it, it's actually important because it helps you to be more efficient at your work and multitask. So there's the thing I'm doing now. I mean, in this case, I'm doing the interview with you, but I put some of the questions on the side.
Very good. Yeah, double monitors are very good, especially to study. Because, for example, you can watch video in one monitor and you can take notes in the other, or you can code in one monitor and take notes or do whatever in the other monitor or research a solution when you run through a bug. So I really like working with two monitors.
I think this is even more important now because we have these things called phones, and they take up a lot of, especially teenagers' time nowadays. Not all kids even have a computer. Just by using a computer, you learn to type, you learn how to like multitask. And I feel like you're more likely to be productive because tapping the game or whatever social media app on your phone feels much more easier than opening up a website. There's something less addicting about having a desktop.
Yeah, you do more, right? So you're not like when you on your phone, you have the tendency of getting lazy and just scroll on random things and just waste time.
Something which has contributed to a lot of my technology experiences is, I guess, playing Minecraft. I used to just be a player and play Minecraft, but when I was in like fourth or fifth grade, like my dad asked me if I wanted to run my own Minecraft server. which
Nice.
I thought that was some crazy idea to like actually manage a server and have people on. But I actually made it happen, and I think the winter break of fifth grade, I had my server up and running
Wow.
and had people joining. But like just to get a server running, I had to learn about how to use plugins on the server. I need different protection plugins to stop anyone from joining and making a mess of the server. And I had been keeping that server up for at least 5 years after I have been really dedicated to it. So I would install a lot of plugins. They would break. I'd have to figure out what plugin dependencies I had have to install too. And sometimes plugins are just not compatible with each other, and they all have YAML files, which
Wow.
not exactly programming, but reading through YAML files and getting that space or tab wrong. And sometimes there's more documentation online because they don't tell you how to do everything in the YAML file. I think that's the closest thing to like coding and debugging I've had when I was little.
Wow. That's amazing. So young. And I'm really amazed on how your dad was creative to motivate you on coding in a very young age.
Yeah,
He-
it's not just coding. Like, I think my earliest memories of technology are I had a V-Smile console. Those are like outdated now, but it's a console meant for little kids. So I had a lot of gaming. And I think I also remember we had a GameCube. So there's
Nice.
this game called Metroid, and the
Love it.
base game was too hard for me, but they had this multiplayer VS mode where you fight versus a person. So I remember just, I don't know, I was like fighting against my dad, but I would just roll into a ball and explore the map. So I think I've early experiences like that, even if I was only 2 or 3, they kind of stick, and they give me the idea that gaming and technology, like it it's not just a boy thing. Girls can do it too. And for me at the time personally, I just enjoyed it. And if I enjoy it, I want to do it more. So that's what I did.
Yeah. So like the way you teach them or what technologies they use to teach them, what tools they use to motivate them to get involved into coding. We briefly talked about the things you did on your workshops. You created a zombie game and then you make them work on that so that they have fun while they build their program, while they build their apps. So can you tell me more about this methodology you use to teach them,
I think
like the
talking about
way?
my book is the best way to talk about the methodology
Yeah.
because the first chapter of my book is all about methodology of teaching kids and also teaching your daughters too.
Awesome.
But I break the book up into 5 chapters. So the middle 3 chapters are about, it's a project-based book, and I sort the projects based on age and difficulty. So this goes back to picking projects which aren't too hard, but aren't too easy either. So the second chapter, the first few projects I have are squishy circuits and paper circuits. So the circuits project is a conductive Play-Doh project. So you would take Play-Doh and you'd put wires in between Play-Doh, and then you can have a battery pack and LED, and the LED will light up. And there's also like conductive dough and non-conductive dough. Because to make a circuit, for squishy circuits, you need 2 blobs of Play-Doh, and you need those Play-Doh not to touch. And you separate the 2 LED prongs and plug them into both blobs of Play-Doh.
So on this book, do you provide the materials for?
I provide all a list of materials you need. You still have to buy them yourself on Amazon.
Oh, okay, but you provide the links and everything they need so that they get all the materials and they can do their own experiments.
Yeah. And with the Squishy Circuits project, like there is I mean it's a kind of a brand name because the easiest path is to just pay money and buy it. but it is possible to completely DIY it, and you can make your own dough on the stove and pretty much use any battery and LEDs. It's compatible. The other project I have is paper circuits, which I guess I got the inspiration from this because I did a paper circuits workshop when I was really little, and I actually enjoyed it a lot. But this is what it looks like. In this case, it's a light up cat, and when I push here, it should shine the LEDs up top.
Wow, that's amazing.
And if I open this up, you can see all the wiring. So
Oh,
this is all just copper tape, and these are the two LEDs, and this is a battery. So when I
wow,
fold this paper in half, this contact on the bottom touches the top of the battery, and it forms a circuit.
that's amazing.
So I think something like this is a template which I created for kids, but once they do the template and they figure out how it works, I really want kids to design their own projects.
How did you learn? Did this not only coding, it's a little bit of electronics as well. How did you learn about electronics and coding? Did you study yourself? How was the process to learn and be able to teach other kids?
For this book specifically, I just did research to see what projects were available, and I've been involved with kids' workshops for almost all my life now. So I feel like I've seen everything. I've seen what works, what doesn't work, and based on what I've seen, I know what should be possible.
That's amazing. So in this particular project, there isn't coding. You are using electronic components, basically. Only.
Yeah, the goal of the first two chapters, or no, the first two projects in the first chapter is I want to introduce technology to kids who are like 3 years old, like kids who can't even read and write yet. They're
Wow.
probably good for all like elementary school kids too. But that's how I got started in technology. I feel like I was doing technology before I could even read and write or even understand the concept of technology being a thing. So it's to really have kids grow up with it so that, say, when they get to like middle school, they won't see that technology as some boy thing. They'll just be like, oh, I've done technology before and it's fun. So maybe I'll do more of it.
Talk more about diversity. I know that in your book, you've been making the effort to have more diversity in the learning. So tell me more about this process of how you can encourage more women to do programming.
I think it's all about opportunity. For a personal story, the term woman in tech, I didn't think it was that big a problem until I started traveling to conferences the past 3 years. And growing up, like, I mean, I've always done tech, and I had friends who were girls who did tech. And I think my school systems in general support technology too. So I just didn't see it as a problem. And honestly think that's the best scenario for kids. If they're already doing technology and they don't see it as a problem, then that means they're doing tech. And when I was doing my book and presentations, I found research that like kids start forming gender biases and what they want to do around middle school. There's more girls who say they would be interested in technology while they're younger, but when you hit like middle school and high school, the path splits off, and for some reason, girls see tech as a guy thing. My goal with this book is I want parents to introduce their introduce technology to their girls. They might just buy the book for their son, and that's totally fine. But if they happen to also have a daughter, then I hope that after reading this book, like they'll also give their daughter the same opportunities.
Yeah. And it's funny that nowadays we have this bias in the world. We have a lot fewer girls going to tech and programming because the very first programmer in the world was a woman, Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace. It doesn't make much sense. I don't know why we went this way in history, but that's a reality because, for example, in the college degree I did, there was something around 60 men and 5 women. So the difference is really high. And when I go to conferences, I can clearly see that 90% of the audience are men. Unfortunately, worldwide is a reality, and it's a tough battle, but it's a worth it by battle to fight for.
I think it's harder to ask women, I guess adult women, to stay in technology if they don't like it or they're having trouble. But I think it's easier to get young girls involved in technology because they haven't seen the world yet. I'm just saying this based off my own experience.
You're right. If you don't know that the world has this bias and has all of those like society locks, there's no reason that you can't do tech. It's just something that the society imposed. It came from I don't know where, because for me it doesn't make sense. But as I said, if you're a kid and if you don't know none of this bullshit, then you can just start coding. Like there's nothing preventing you.
Yeah. And I think even today, there's a lot of women in tech outreach communities. There's more awareness that it's a problem. So I think even if you're an adult today coding, there's resources out there. You can find people like you. And honestly, you should just do technology because you love it. And personally, technology is profitable. You make a lot of money as a technologist. So I think for parents raising kids, like, that's honestly the best reason to get your kids into tech. They're missing out on something potentially fun and something which makes a lot of money.
Exactly. And it's gonna be the future for many years. Like it will never stop. Technology will never stop growing. Nowadays we have AI, we have cloud computing, we have so much, so many things being, and we need more and more tech people in the industry. And that's a natural evolution, right? We're gonna need less and less of those jobs that we don't require lots of. Any job that can be automated will be, because AI is taking the world by storm. It's just a matter of time that jobs that don't require a lot of thinking, they will be automated. And we're going to need more and more programmers to create solutions with software. So that's the future.
Yeah, I think you're right about this. I also want to talk about the some of the other projects in my book. So like I talked about the easiest projects, but I think it would be bad to leave it at that because the projects are really for kids of all ages. So the second, I guess third chapter is about block coding projects. So I think showing is easier than telling. So this is one of the projects. It is the Makersoid. It's
Oh,
basically like a Lego crab, and I picked the crab project, but they have an app with literally hundreds of projects.
looks amazing.
So you can program this to walk side by side, and there's like a distance sensor in front. So if you put your
Wow.
hand in front, you can program it to react to it. But I think
Awesome.
projects like this are good for introducing kids to technology. Oh, and something else interesting is I picked this off-brand Makersoid not Lego set because of how expensive the Lego Spike is. It's like literally $400. And this one is like about 100.
Oh, it's much better. And what happens is a crab, right?
Yeah, it's a crab, but they have other instructions for the dinosaur, crocodile,
Nice. Does
infinite.
he move?
Yeah, he does move. It has a motor in the back and it controls the legs to walk side to side.
Can you show us?
Oh, there I go.
Oh, great.
It says connected. Now I'll try not to pinch my fingers while I hold it up. There.
Wow, that's amazing.
So right now I'm just controlling it using the app, but you can also program it. So I think for the project I have, I program it to if you wave your hand in front, it moves like 10 steps to the left, then 10 steps to the right. Then
Can you
plays some
show?
music. But I think you get the basic idea with this guy. You can program it to, you can see the motor on the back. Motors only spin left or right, and you can control the speed. And there's like gears and axes, which make the crab look like it's walking. It's offset, which is cute.
Nice.
So why don't I talk about my other book since I'm holding it?
Sure.
So this is my Fippy's AI friend book. I'll just flip a page so you can see it. It's like a colorful picture book. And I wrote this book for CNCF Kids Day, which is like a kids workshop program I teach at for KubeCon. So I've been doing this the past like 3 years. And I teach at the Americas and European events. And they have a Fippy mascot for the event. So that's why I made the book based off that. And this book, I also have it's a workshop book. I have instructions here. So this basically tells you to go to a Scratch website. And this is a special version of the Scratch website I hold on my GitHub pages because it has a AI plugin which lets you program your own AI model by scanning images. So if I flip the page, you can see all these characters. So the idea is you hold up the character like really close to the camera and you take like maybe 20 pictures of that character. You move the book closer and further from the camera to train it. And when you hold up that same character again, then it'll do something in the game. In this
Oh,
case, the story is about inviting friends onto the ship for a party. So you'll see a graphic of that character you're holding up running across the screen.
so is it a book where you create a game?
It's all on Scratch, which is a block coding like website software.
Oh, yeah. So Scratch is that software where kids can code with drag and drop, right?
Yeah. So it's all drag and drop coding.
Okay. And then what is the project they create exactly on Scratch?
It's actually related to the story in the book. So, I mean, the story, the main character is Kimani, and you can see the first page Kimani gets created. And there's a zebra. It's the zebra's birthday party. So they want to throw a surprise party for the zebra. And to throw a party, they have to go around Paris and invite all their friends to the party. So the project in Scratch, I don't have the kids make the game from scratch because that's too hard and tedious. So I give them a file of the game partially done, and I just ask them to train the images of the characters to finish it. So I think
And
this is part of making projects easy so that kids can build confidence and enjoy it.
that's a good idea. I like the idea to give them like part of the project so that they can continue because a lot of the complexity is to start the project from scratch. But you mentioned that they would have to train, they would have to use machine learning to finish the drawings.
Honestly, it might be easier to show the workshop. Would that be possible?
Sure. Yeah. Show us. That's actually excellent. If you can show us how it works, that's even better.
Okay, so you should be seeing my screen. This is the website I built for the book. You can see that I actually have a lot of translations for the book. So French, Italian, Japanese, Greek.
Even Greek.
Yeah, but Amazon wouldn't let me publish the Greek, so it's mostly just online. It's for jQuery for kids. So this is the instructions. They're a little long, but I think that's necessary because I want to break down the steps with screenshots to make it so that anyone can follow it. And I actually had a lot of parents who tried this workshop with their kids and they were successful without asking me anything. So I think the instructions work. This is the template. It downloads a Scratch SB3 file. So this is how I have a partially finished project without having the kids code from scratch. The third button goes to Scratch, but it actually goes to scratch.fippyai.com. So it's not the Scratch website because this particular version of Scratch has a special plugin. So I need to load the file I just downloaded, allow my camera. Wonder if that'll compete with Zoom. I'm not sure if it'll work with the camera competing, but the basic idea is I have Kimani here. This is the boat, and I need friends to board. I can train a label. This is what I would train the friends on. So basically, I would click this button while holding the character up to the camera to train, and each click is taking one photo. For this, maybe I can hack the game to not train it. And oh, I have to go to Goldie and I ask the kids to. There's this board ship block, and I'm just going to put it under the flag. So each time I click it, this is what happens if you hold the picture up. But I'm not showing that part because of the camera conflict. So you can train all the characters to board the ship. And you can see that this is the only thing the kids have to do. The AI blocks plus the board ship block. And I create this variable on the side here. But you can see this is like 5 blocks with specific values. I think that would be a little frustrating for kids if I had to see all this code, which makes it happen. I do all the hard parts for kids.
That's amazing.
So the main like purpose of this is to basically teach about AI concepts and how you can train models. So that's basically the project.
Very good. That's excellent. I really like the idea of bringing a fun game and like using a tool that is drag and drop where the kids can start more easily.
I think a
Projects.
lot of kids are already familiar with Scratch, which it helps
Oh, that's
because they're
very
learning
nice.
new concepts on top of something they might already know.
Are you learning Scratch on school?
It's not part of the core curriculum. If a teacher cares a lot about technology, then they might spend like one day at most where they can afford to have the kids play on Scratch. But I also see Scratch is one of the most common programs they have kids do in any STEM exercises. It's like any after school programs, summer camps, activities. There's even like a Scratch workshop for like kids workshops like the ones I teach. So this Fippy's AI friend book, I've taught the kids workshop section of this for CNCF Kids Day, and that's why I wrote the book for the conference and the kids workshop. I think for me writing this book is one of the biggest reasons I was able to write my new Raising Young Coders book because it was something I could talk about. Like, I actually was given the opportunity to give a keynote at DevNexus, and that's because I had a book and something physical I could show the audience. And actually, my acquiring editor, Melissa Duffy, was watching my keynote. So she's the one who like gave me the opportunity to write Raising Young Coders. I met her after a book signing I had, which was really popular.
Incredible. The way you show your work, the way you help kids to get into technology. It's well thought. It's a process. It works because you did it with yourself, right? So you got into tech using the same techniques and you want to give other kids the same privilege you had on starting young on technology.
I think I felt that in my experience teaching kids workshops, like I teach the kids for 2 hours. Maybe I teach two kids workshops so that more kids get the chance to learn. But once they go home, I don't really know what happens. Like, it's possible that the parents just treat it like extended schooling on the weekend. I don't really know. So that's why I wanted to write this book, Raising Young Coders, because I think sometimes the best way to get kids into technology is not just showing the kids, but showing the parents, because honestly, they're like the teachers and teachers in the house. And actually, that's one of my inspirations for creating my session, which I talk about at conferences. So it's also the same topic I have for my keynote. It's about getting kids involved in technology, and it's designed for basically any parent who has kids, but it's super relevant for Java conferences because a lot of Java developers have kids. So
Yes,
they can learn about the greatest and latest new Java version, but I think learning about what they should do with their kids is also beneficial.
definitely. And how was the experience of doing a keynote, on your first keynote, were you nervous? Because there are so many people in the audience, right? I imagine there was, at Dev Nexus, a lot of people, like maybe something around like 3,000 people. I'm not sure, but a lot of people.
Now that's an interesting story. My first experience doing the keynote. So, yes, I was definitely very nervous, but something which happened is we had some technical issues. So it was like a 30-minute keynote, and we couldn't get my laptop connected for the first like 10 or more minutes. So we had a lot of people on stage panicking about getting my slides up, and 10 minutes is enough time that you have to entertain the audience somehow. I was mostly hands off with my laptop at that point because I think my focus had to be like engaging with the audience. So I actually got a little help with that. I had someone run up on stage and prompt me with some questions. But I think once I have a start, I'm pretty good at just impromptu speaking. Yeah, the challenging thing with the keynote I gave is I had to put my 30 minutes worth of content into like 20 minutes. So I had to rush the slides a little bit. And I was also giving a demo. So the Fippy's AI friend project I just showed, I also showed that on screen within 3 or 5 minutes. I had to go through it pretty quickly. But I think I'm really proud of myself. I was able to give a keynote in that environment. And honestly, I feel like the audience was more pleased with it because they saw me on stage dealing with all those issues, and I still gave a really good talk and pulled through.
That's amazing. How did you do to entertain the audience on those 10 minutes?
Honestly, I think the person who helped me out asked me questions like how I'm enjoying Atlanta, like since the conference was in Atlanta, Georgia. I think for me, it's just about thinking of responses which would entertain the audience. So I haven't actually seen much of Atlanta at the time because I mean, I just went through the airport into the conference. So I had to
Huh.
think of something. So I think at the time, I remember like whenever I go to the bathroom, there's these Georgia Pacific branded bathroom products, like the toilet paper dispenser. So I just said on stage that was one of the most memorable things for me. The toiletries made in Georgia. That gave the audience a laugh. And another question was my like favorite foods, which this is interesting to me. I find it sometimes it's less about being truthful and more about entertaining the audience. So at the time I said KFC because people find that really funny for some reason. But that's interesting for me because right now I've actually found out I'm gluten intolerant. So it's all right.
So, did you learn some techniques before doing the keynote? Did you rehearse the keynote again and again? How was the process to deliver the keynote exactly?
That set talk as a session before. So the first session I gave was actually at DevVox Morocco, and I think that was my only practice, honestly.
Wow.
I have a lot of stage speaking experience because of my kids' workshops. At the beginning of each workshop, I have to get up there and talk for maybe 10-15 minutes about the workshop, introductions and such. So surprisingly, a lot of stage speaking is something I've been trained on at a young age, but I definitely still get nervous in like a new environment.
Yeah, but I understand it became natural to you because you're like how many years you have of experience doing that, but still you did something that maybe you never done before. You had to improvise, and that's very hard when you are in front of so many people in a keynote. So, how did you feel during this time?
I guess this is about me and my personality. I feel like I actually do better in a high stress environment. Naturally, I don't feel like I'm that much of a talkative person, but something about it when I'm on stage, I feel like the words just come out. And I have this stage face. I know the right personality or how I should act and do while I'm thinking in a high pressure on stage environment. And I've also grew up watching my dad on stage. He's in DevRel, very out there. So I think a lot of my presentation skills, like he helped me build some of my kids workshop presentations. And I actually watched him teach the Raspberry Pi Kids Workshop because he was teaching it before I was.
That's so interesting. Yeah, like you learn by example.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of his presentation styles is putting a big picture on screen with one line, one sentence at most, and then he'll just talk about it while making some jokes. So I think I learned from that because the audience really likes it. They'd rather look at a picture than look at bullet points. And I guess I also learned how to do like improvised presenting. I don't go off a script, but I come up with some basic ideas I want to come across. And I have to think of like stories and the right words while I'm talking. But personally, I'm really bad at memorizing things. That's not one of my skill sets. So this works for me.
Amazing. So good. Like it's actually performed in a high stress environment. It's not easy.
But I also want to say that like giving a presentation to a conference is very different than presenting to the kids in your class. Because I've had a lot of assignments and experiences when I was little where maybe we'd have some group project or some assignment which requires us to present our research in class. And it's really nerve-wracking. I feel like the difference between presenting to your class and presenting to on stage is your classmates are more focused about their own presentation and they might even be judging you because they're comparing your work to their own. And the same thing to the teacher, they're grading you. But when you get up on stage in a developer conference, everyone there believes you're the expert. Like, they may even like laugh at your jokes because they're actually there to enjoy themselves. So it's just like a world's difference to have a positive environment of people who are there to listen to you and trust you. So I feel like a lot of kids get turned away from stage speaking because of that classroom pressure experience. I never liked that myself.
You mentioned something that's very difficult to do in talks, which is to make jokes. How do you develop that? Is something natural for you? Or you
Um,
develop some strategies to do the jokes?
I think I probably get this the most from my kids' workshop experience. So in my presentation, before I even give the kids a Raspberry Pi, I'm teaching them what a Raspberry Pi is and like why they should care about it. So one of the slides I talk about how Raspberry Pis are really cheap, which is one of the benefits to them. I say it's only $35, but then as I click through the slides, I compare the price of a Raspberry Pi to physical things you can buy. So one of them is a birthday cake, and one of the jokes I would make is usually at the beginning there's still parents in the room. So I'd say how they're a little too old for a cake and they should invest in a Raspberry Pi. And another joke in that slide is I'd put a picture of diapers because you'd be surprised how expensive diapers are. In that room, parents know the financial burden of diapers. They all have kids, and kids just giggle because diapers are funny to look at. So that's how I implemented jokes early on. And I'm not sure, I guess that just carried through with me. I also like watching my dad's presentation style. He inserts some jokes. My style of jokes is sarcastic. I say something funny with a pretty straight face. And then if people laugh, then I know to repeat that joke again in the next presentation. And if people don't react to it, then I don't do it again. So I think by giving the presentation multiple times, I gauge people's reactions and the ones which make people laugh, I repeat again.
Very good. And it makes sense. You basically create jokes that are connected to your audience. And you also do an online degree in computer science, right? So can you share more about this experience? How is to do such a complex degree online. How is the experience?
My experience is definitely unique. Just to give explanation, I have friends also studying computer science, but they chose to go a more traditional route, so they would fly out across the United States and go to their university to attend in-person college. So for me, I did something different, which is go to a completely online college. How this started is COVID hit when I was in my third year of high school. So, in my third year of high school, they made the assignments virtual, which I enjoyed submitting assignments and not having to worry about attending class. But then in my fourth year of high school, they converted classroom hours to Zoom meeting hours. So, I would be stuck on Zoom with the camera on at full attention for like 5 hours a day, which that didn't really sit well with me. I don't like being looked at for 5 hours or having to give my attention. And honestly, I feel like just by my learning style, I don't learn that much from lectures. I feel like I learn by doing, or I learn better when I'm working with someone or asking for help. So I did a fully online high school because I didn't want to sit in Zoom in that environment. So my dad helped me find an online high school. And I made sure to find a high school which doesn't do Zoom meetings because there are online programs which still have lectures. But I just wanted to pass and submit my assignments and show I can do the work. So this kind of transferred to college because I found that style really worked for me. So I looked for a completely online college which had no meetings. So that's how I ended up at Colorado State University Global. And I've been doing this college for a while. I only have a year slightly under left doing a computer science degree. And the basic workflow of my college is I take two classes at a time, and those two classes only last for 2 months. So I actually like that it's more focused work, and it also gets rid of the finals crunch time when you've 5 or 6 finals at the end of the semester. And I think having my online college, I mean, it's given me more time and the opportunity to go to different conferences the past 3 years. I mean, my dad's in Devrel, he has to travel, but he's been bringing me to all the conferences he has been going to. And because of that, I've been able to meet like actual people in the industry, meet different people, watch some sessions, go to like speaker dinners and such. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons I was able to write 2 books and just like meeting people. I mean, I taught kids workshops at events. That's how I meet people. So I wrote my first book and I met my acquiring editor at an event because I was giving a keynote. So I think opportunities come just by being there. And even you, I met you at a conference, I believe in DevOps Morocco 3 years ago. So obviously we're talking now because of that. But I think like my online school, surprisingly, I don't think they teach programming that well. I think I'm fortunate that I learned how to program in high school, and my high school had computer science classes. But I don't know. Like, my school has a lot of essay-based assignments. Sometimes I'm like writing about how to program rather than actual programming. But writing is also an important skill set, which I've really improved my writing, which I was able to write a book now.
That's amazing. So, in my opinion, online learning is the future. But the thing is that it's the future only for disciplined people, which you are disciplined, but most people are not. So, for most people, online learning still doesn't work.
Talk
As for
to
the,
my friends and tell them about my online school. A lot of, most of them say they don't think they could do it because you're missing the teachers and the friend environment to remind you when assignments are due, remind you to study, and that in-person engagement. I think I'm also fortunate that, I mean, I still live in this house, so, I mean, I'm definitely saving my parents on college tuition. It's much cheaper tuition and no housing fees. But I also get a lot of tutoring help from my dad because he's also in the computer science field. So just personally, I learned a lot better from people like one-on-one time. But it's definitely not something everyone can do.
Yeah, it's not something for everyone because in your case, you have also the great advantage of having your dad who is a huge reference in the Java world. And also other great thing is that you go to conferences, right? And in those conferences, you meet people. Because one con I see from not going to the college is that you end up not having too much of a social interaction. And that might be bad for career, for networking, for everything if the person doesn't have access to conferences, for example. But in your case, it works very well because it gives you more time. The other crucial fact is that you are disciplined. You can study yourself. And you also had social interactions when you go to conferences and you give talks. So you are developing all the areas you need to succeed in your career and to accomplish amazing things, which you already are doing, right? You're already accomplishing far above the average things like, so you
I
are
think
doing
the most
amazing.
common case is most of my classmates in my school are already working adults and they may just want a second chance at life or a better career. So this class is really designed so that you can do it in your evenings and weekends and make it through.
Exactly. And it also helps with people who are already working and they don't have much time, can still have a degree. Very good. So let's go back talking about your books. What was the most surprising part of writing your book? What were the main challenges you faced to write your book? And how did the ideas come to you to write your two books?
My Fippy's AI friend was inspired off of teaching kids workshops at CNCF Kids Day. They already have the mascots, and I've actually been wanting to write a book since maybe 2 years ago, but I didn't quite have that I have speaking experience, but like speaking to adults in sessions. I wasn't quite out there in the community enough that I could talk to a publishing editor. So I think writing that first book for me was one of the best ways for me to get out there. I mean, something physical I can show people. And I created a conference session based off it and inspiring parents and kids to get into technology. For my Raising Young Coders book, I think honestly the first chapter is largely based off of my session, which I give, also the keynote. So that was a really good starting point, but it's not like I can just copy paste it. And I had to do new research, new ideas. So it definitely was an effort. If you want to talk about surprising things, it would be the writer's block you get before you even start writing the book. I think that's the single most hardest thing about writing a book this length is getting started. Because you're just at the front of such a huge project and you're like, where do I even start? But I think for the general book workflow, I averaged on about one chapter per month. And honestly, it requires a lot of self-discipline. Like, I actually managed to meet all my deadlines, and I even submitted my chapters earlier because I was hoping for the book to be published in time for KubeCon. But I think I get some of this self-discipline from my online school, but I'd say this is extreme because writing the chapters probably takes 2 or 3 weeks of really focused work. When I'm writing the chapters for the projects, I would have to order the projects and I would have to just try the project. I don't have time to wait. I have to just open the box and read through the manuals and try it. And also writing books, you'd think the time consuming part is sitting in front of your computer and writing, but I'd say it takes the same amount of time or maybe even longer to come up with the ideas because I really care about what I'm writing. Like, I've actually never loved reading books. I never liked books as a kid. So, what I value is I want my words to matter. Someone who reads this, like, I don't want them to waste that much time reading it, but I want them to learn as much as they can from what I write. So, doing that style of writing, it requires a lot of thinking. Like, just writing one section of the book, which is like maybe a page, I could easily spend 2 or 3 days thinking about how I convey the message. It's a challenging topic because I'm trying to convey to parents that they should inspire their kids. Like, it would almost be easier to convince the reader why they should get into technology, but I have to convince them to take an action for someone else, which that's hard to do.
You really think through every word you write in the book.
Yeah, I think the most challenging section I wrote was a section about screen time and computer limits for kids because a lot of parents believe that technology is bad. Kids waste their life using it. They just watch YouTube or social media on their iPads and phones, which it's not wrong because social media and a lot of media is definitely a waste of time. But I had to like clearly explain and convince to parents why, like, yes, you're right, but also get your kids into technology. It's really challenging not to offend parents in that area. So I probably took a week writing it and rewriting it because I really want to get that idea across.
And how do you develop your schedule? How many hours a day were you writing the book?
I usually don't think of things in terms of hours. It's just, I think of it in terms of stages of the project. Like I said, I spend more time thinking than doing. So this could be like, I wake up and I'm making tea and I'm still thinking about the book. Even if I'm on the couch playing video games, I can still be thinking about what I should do next. Sometimes it helps to talk to people in the house. So I would talk to my dad and about my ideas, and sometimes he'd have something to add to it. So actual time writing the book, once I get the ideas, I can write a good section in a few hours. But a lot of that work is just planning.
Interesting. So you do your stuff, and while you're doing other things, you are thinking through what you can write on the book. And then the work becomes much easier because then you just need to write.
Yeah.
Very good. I like this process. I also wrote some books and yeah, I was thinking a lot about the book as well. But to keep writing the book, I did a little bit different. So I would use the Pomodoro technique. So I would like every day in the morning, like the first thing I would do in the morning, I would start the Pomodoro and I would start writing. And it worked. It's difficult to finish a book because it needs a lot of discipline. But I also like your approach to write the book. Like you think through the book.
I think I'm also fortunate, like, I was able to take some time off school so that I could really focus on this. Because of my online school format, I took a lot of classes during the summer just because I could stop school, but I feel like it wasn't that time consuming and wanted to get my degree. So that gave me some leverage to take some time off.
Very good. And I know that for you, we've been discussing about gender diversity, and we know this is very important. Is there something else you'd like to add on this topic regarding your book or your projects or everything you've been doing regarding this topic?
I feel like we think of gender diversity as everyone tries to be inclusive. They at least pretend to be inclusive. I feel like honestly, gender diversity in tech, like, they've turned into these weird magic words which make you sound like a good human. And I just find this really unfortunate because I don't know, like, women are half the population. Why is this a question?
Yeah.
So this was closer to my line of thinking before going to conferences, but after going to conferences, I do see a lot of guys. And I do think it's necessary that we help promote getting more women in technology. But telling women to get in technology in the workplace, at conferences, they're either in it or they're not in it. So it's not like you're going to get new people involved magically. So I think, I mean, for writing my book, you can get more girls involved. So I believe that to be an effective approach. And also for my book, I do have a Raspberry Pi workshop at the end for older kids. So I just wanted to stress that it's really for all age ranges. And the last chapter of the book, I have a section about I interviewed 5 women who I've met during my experiences at conferences and who I find personally to be good role models. I mean, at conferences, it's true there's a lot of guys, but I met these people and they're doing their jobs and they're passionate about technology. So I think I wanted to share with parents that there's women in technology and they can be good role models. And I specifically chose people who I would say are not too famous. Like they might be a little famous because they're in DevRel, but I don't have an example of someone super famous, but I'm not gonna interview like Ada Lovelace because I want relatable role models. Like for kids, this is someone you can become one day. So I find that comparing yourself to the most famous person out there doesn't help.
That's true. Because if a kid sees a woman who is totally out of reach, like in another like dimension, like they will say, okay, what's the point of trying? Like she's too much. They would think I will never be like her.
Yeah, so I
And
was able to meet a lot of great women at conferences.
yeah, and it's something you can do in your workshops. Create a connection with them, show that they can be like you, show them that like you don't have special powers or special privileges, as you will be their mentors, right? You're gonna help them. Basically, the more we do that in our talks, the more we connect with our audience. It's difficult sometimes. We have to do our best to not only talk to our audiences during the talk, but also when we are just hanging out. Just reach out to someone from the audience. Say, hey, how are you? Did you enjoy my talk? How is your process on learning, coding? Like just casual talk. Like that also helps to be closer to your audience.
Yeah, I see a lot of speakers do questions at the end of their talk and like Q&A if they have time. I feel like for my sessions, I like doing a Q&A part for the last 5 or 10 minutes. And I think for this section on getting kids into technology, it helps a lot because when parents hear other parents with the struggles of their own kids, it's very relatable. And I mean, for the audience members, they're like, maybe they think their kids are little brats, but now they're like, oh, there's other little brats.
The work you do is so important and it's a big cause. Diversity in tech is something that we're going to have to be fighting for. And the things you're doing is great already. You have a book, you talk about the subject, and your book will definitely bring more gender diversity. It will
Yeah, I
help,
think so
definitely.
too. That is my hope with this book. And it's also perfectly good for, I want to be inclusive, so it's not a book for girls only. It's also for boys.
Very good. And about programming preferences, do you have a favorite programming language? What draws you to it?
I'm not sure if I have a favorite language, but I talked about how I used to run a Minecraft server and I tried programming some plugins myself. And the Java edition of Minecraft is all in Java. So I probably spent most of my time with Java. And like my dad, who's a Java guy, the Raspberry Pi Kids Workshop I taught is all in JavaFX. In school, I learned some Python, a little bit of C+, plus, but I haven't used them quite as much.
Very good. How do you like Python or C++?
I think Python is it's just the go-to language for teaching kids. Like most of the projects for kids which I've found, they default as Python for the language. And C plus is in the clouds. I haven't used it much.
Yeah, C plus is usually used for low-level programming for games.
I think all programming languages have their purposes. C plus for low level programming. I think Java is in a lot of corporate systems now, and I believe a lot of AI systems are written in Python.
It's important to say that Java also has great potential and it is very powerful for AI as well. It's not only Python. In Java, you can find many libraries that empower the language to build very robust things, as robust as we would do with Python. Java is also having exponential growth in this area. Java never stopped growing.
I feel like it's just the rate of development. I believe that Python is the first choice for people developing AI, the most cutting edge AI, because every month there's something new. But you're right that Java has AI capabilities. It's catching up.
It is catching up, yeah. Very good. And one thing that really interested me is about skill building habits, because that's something I really worry about my mentees. I want them to learn programming as effectively as possible because in the world nowadays, there's so many things happening and they need to keep up to date with technologies while having like their 9 to 5 job and having to take care of their families. And that's something that really interests me because I want them to be able to learn even in this difficult environment we live nowadays because it's so fast paced. And I would like to know, how do you stay up to date as a developer? And I'm curious if you have any daily rituals or how do you do exactly?
Personally, I talk to a lot of developers, but I don't necessarily do everything that they do. But I hear that people they looked at LinkedIn and social media because if you're following the people who are closest to the most cutting edge technology, then they'll give you updates and post it like immediately. So I think social media is one way of learning cutting edge technology. Another way is conferences. Like sometimes the best way of learning what's the most recent technology is looking at the conference schedule. Just by looking at the schedule, you can learn a lot because you learn all the new up to date topics. But going to conferences is one way, but looking at the schedule is even better. And then you can do your research.
That's amazing. That's a very good insight because you don't necessarily need to go to the conference. Obviously, if you go to the conference, it's better because then you have the information handed to you. But still, if you can't go to the conference, you can still see what are the titles of the talks and you can do the research yourself.
This is just my personal opinion, but I feel like a lot of speakers at conferences, they're DevRel, and it is their job to talk about their company's products.
Yeah.
But I find that a lot of times that their technology is amazing, but there's also other competitors doing similar things, and they'll have different feature sets, advantages and disadvantages. So even when you go to watch a talk, sometimes it's good to just look it up online and see what else there is related to it.
Yeah, that's very smart because then you are not biased to a technology. There might be others, even better. Obviously, if you're a developer advocate, you have to say good things about your technology. You won't say anything about the others. So by going to a talk where they're only developers advocate, and I'm not criticizing this profession because I think they are amazing and they must continue doing this amazing job.
I think they
You
do
know,
provide a lot because, I
yeah,
mean, imagine if they didn't give that talk. Then you would have never heard about that technology before. And
exactly.
sometimes after the talk, you can even ask them questions, which, I mean, you can't do that if they weren't there.
The other good thing about them is that they go really deep into their own technologies. They won't be moving from one technology to the other. very often. They're going to really give best material possible in their talks. And it's also more difficult for developers who don't have a salary from giving talks. It's difficult for developers to just travel to another country and just give a talk. In that sense, developer advocates, if they weren't them, other developers, like it would be very difficult for them to go to those conferences. And also, it's more difficult for developers to go on their own and build this experience on their own as well.
I also believe that conferences drive innovation because companies and developer advocates, they feel obligated to deliver something new every year so that they're not talking about the same thing at the conference. So because there's that expectation set, it motivates them to keep improving their products and come up with new technologies.
Exactly. The conferences are always expecting the latest technologies. If you submit a talk that doesn't talk about the latest technologies, it will be usually rejected. And it's fair. One of the jobs of conferences is to show the latest thing. Okay, so social media conferences, looking at talk titles and doing research yourself. And we use much of AI to learn nowadays. How is your interaction with AI?
I expect it's wrong. That's my default state. Something I would like to talk about is I've found it really difficult to use the internet now. If I'm just looking for literally any information, like maybe I have a cat, ragdoll cat. Maybe I want to learn more about, let's just say he has some medical condition and I need to research it. So say if I try to use Google to look it up, I'm going to get like 10 or 20 or more sites, which all have information which is really similar and is sometimes wrong. And I've noticed that like a lot of these sites, it's more words than content, definitely. And they're also all broken up in a very, let's say, AI way. There can be like 20 topics vaguely related about my question, but as you get further down the list, it's less and less related. So I think AI is affecting the internet in a less than favorable way. I find that a lot of my research now, just by using Google, I have to type Reddit into my search because I want answers from people, not the marketing people trying to farm their website clicks.
Interesting. So you don't use much of ChatGPT or Llama or Cloud. You don't use it much for research that.
I don't use it for research. I think ChatGPT. I found this tool called Notebook LM by Google, and it's interesting because you could actually take this interview now that we're doing. You could turn it into a transcript and put it into Google LLM and ask it questions. So rather than having to listen to this long interview, you can pull out important information. So I think that's the rare case of AI actually being useful. I use ChatGPT sometimes. I think it's good for it's if you're writing something that you don't care about, it's good. Which I don't know if that's really a good thing, but I guess sometimes you just have to read a long document and respond somewhere. I'm not sure. Just think of the most brainless activity, and that's what AI is good for. I don't trust it, but that doesn't mean I won't use it. It just means that I have to look at all its output and make sure it's correct. And sometimes that might mean I have to change something.
I agree. Yeah, sometimes AI mess up
It's
everything.
definitely important to start integrating AI into your daily life. It can definitely help save time if you know how to use it. A big part of using ChatGPT is putting the right prompts in. So you can tell it to change the tone, attitude based on your own personal experience. If you give it like a piece of writing, you can give it context. Like for me, I could say I'm currently a college student studying computer science. Write this in a way which would show my level of experience.
AI is becoming more and more part of our lives. It's just becoming natural. We are using AI every day. It's not only us, even older people are also using AI, like 60 years old people are using AI, which is impressive.
I saw some social media posts yesterday where they're using AI to develop new software to detect sign language. So I think it'll make communication more easy in the future from people of all walks of life.
Yeah, I don't think it will take a long time for people to speak their own languages and to be translated to any language in the world. I think this is very close to happen. The only thing that will suck a little bit is that people won't make the effort of learning new language. They will just, oh, why would I do that if I have a device where it translates everything I say?
Yeah, currently I feel like most people learn English because it's the international language. So if I travel somewhere, if you try to say hi in the local language, they'll just use English back on you because they want to practice. So I think
Exactly.
Americans are the lazy ones and more unwilling to learn international languages.
And that I understand you because, like you said, English is the global language. So you have less of a motivation to learn other languages. Like you could, but it would be a nice to have. It's not something really necessary for your career. Like it would be something that would be useful when you travel, for example. In my opinion, one of the best languages to learn is Spanish because we can use Spanish like almost in the whole South America, in Spain and potentially many other places. I don't know. Even the US, I think there are lots of people in LA or Florida who speaks Spanish. Definitely a useful language.
Yeah, the school systems where I live at, Spanish is one of the most popular world languages that you can learn. And they actually mandate you pick a world language in high school.
Nice. Did you learn Spanish as well?
No, I actually went with Chinese because
Oh,
my mom is from
Chinese.
Taiwan and I learned how to speak growing up.
You speak Chinese?
Yeah, I can speak Mandarin.
That's amazing. Say something in Mandarin.
Ni hao
Ni hao.
just
Ni
means
hao.
hello.
Ni hao. Say, how are you in Mandarin?
Ni jin tian hao ma. Just a
So
warning, I'm like preschooler level Chinese, so I probably botched the grammar.
it's a very difficult language to learn. Are you able to speak with a Chinese person?
I can, but they just have to be patient with me.
Go
The
ahead.
difficult part of Chinese is in English we have alphabets. As long as you make the sound, it's fine. But in Chinese they have tones. So you have to make the sound while, I don't know, it's like singing. You sing notes. But it's Chinese, you must sing the vowels and words. Just based on the way you said the word, it can have a completely different meaning.
That's interesting. And I can notice that when I watch, I know that Korea is different, but when I watch Korean movies or even Japanese movies, I'm not sure if I ever watched Chinese movies, but on those Korean movies, I noticed that they use some special intonation when they are saying something.
I don't think
Think
Korea has tones, but if you ever listen to Chinese music, it'll sound a little warbly because they're trying to make out tones while they're singing.
that's interesting. Yeah, in Korean, I noticed they use some special intonations when they are angry, but I don't know if there is a grammar rule related to that. Could be that they're just showing their emotions through the
Could
words.
be a cultural thing.
Could be an accent.
And something unique about Chinese is they still use a pictographic writing system. So there's no alphabets. Each character is a new set of strokes which you have to memorize. They do have an alphabet system for kindergarteners to learn on, but they try to remove that as soon as you get a little older. And Korean's writing system, in history, one of the emperors completely redid it because it used to be a pictographic system, but now I think Korean writing is composed of three parts to it, and it uses like a similar alphabet-like system, which I wish Chinese were like that because my literacy is pretty bad because I can't read and write. It is challenging.
It is, but still, it's a very useful language to speak because you can communicate with around 2 billion people in the world. So it gives you access to so much. Potentially, it's a skill that will be very useful in the future because we never know what will happen. China is surpassing the US in their GDP. Like it's a matter of time that it become the most powerful country in the world. So it could be a really useful asset for you in the future. So it's a sound choice if you think about business, right? So
You're
difficult
right about
selection.
that. I guess it would let you do business in China.
I don't know what will happen in the future, but it's clear that it's just a matter of time that China will surpass the US economically. And you also run a podcast. So what inspired you to launch your podcast? And do you also speak about coding for kids?
I recorded some interviews last time I was at KubeCon. Like, I mainly wanted to talk to people about inspiring kids to get into technology. So basically, I picked people who could be role models, like the people I picked in my book, and some of them even had kids themselves. But I think my main intention on what I wanted to do with this YouTube channel, I want to dedicate it to my Raising Young Coders book, at least at the beginning, because I think it would be really cool if I could have videos of all the projects to make them more accessible. Because I think sometimes people learn better from watching a video. So I think having more formats out there for learning is helpful. And I think I want to continue making videos, which I mean, I think ideally the kind of following for the channel would be developers who have kids. So I think it's mainly relevant to parents and content which can help inspire them. And also bits about like gender diversity. I think even if I have content about like maybe I interview some woman in tech, it shows that they're there and if they're passionate about technology, then I mean it can help inspire parents to get their girls involved.
Awesome. How many episodes do you have?
I recorded about 6 of them in KubeCon. I still need to learn how to process them. That's one of my projects. Do like audio balancing and clipping the beginning and ends of the videos.
There are many apps you can use. You probably know, but there's CapCut, there is Descript. Descript is a very nice app that you can edit your whole video through the text. You don't need to cut tiny pieces of your video. If you can purely edit your video through the text, and it's excellent. So it could be an option.
That might actually be really useful for if you wanted to make shorts of your video. I know YouTube shorts and short form content has gotten really popular now.
Yeah, CapCut is perfect for shorts.
I was planning on using Adobe Premiere just because I have the Adobe suite and it's a professional tool, so I feel like it might benefit me in the future if I can learn how to use it.
Yeah, but still, it's a steeper learning curve. So with CapCut, it's so easy. Like the user interface is so intuitive, and this script is even easier. So
And I should consider it because the kind of editing I need to do is really simple.
remember something as well. Done is better than perfect, right? If you are expecting too much perfection, it's difficult to finish things. Very good. So what about your role on Foundation? Could you describe a typical day in your work at the Linux Foundation?
Right now, I'm doing some contracting work for them. So, like, I asked Joanna that I wanted to intern for her because I've been going to KubeCon and seeing her do things, and I feel like I could learn a lot from her, so I wanted to learn from her. So she hired me to work on this DEI initiative, like diversity and equity. And the goal is to get more early developers and college students involved with the cloud native technology community. So what I'm actually doing with this is I'm building some workshop content which can teach like college students how to get involved with open source. So first I start with explaining the basics, what open source even is. And this is related to the cloud native community because they are basically based on owning open source projects. Like Kubernetes is their biggest project, which they maintain and take care of. Something I'll teach through a workshop is I'll have students learn how to make their first pull request on GitHub. And I also want to explain to students like the career benefits that they get from open source. Of course, the Linux Foundation wants more people in open source because that's what they do. But imagine you're like a programmer, a student. Like, why should you care? So I think that like getting involved in open source, making commits and contributions to GitHub, like I actually went to KubeCon and I asked different vendors about how I can get internships. And the most useful advice I found was they recommended that I make contributions to GitHub because employers will actually look at your GitHub contributions and commits in addition to your resume. So that's an interesting thing to me because I think in college when you're learning programming, like they don't even talk about open source or Git. So to learn that they're looking at stuff I'm doing outside of school, I think that's advice I want to pass on to other students.
Yeah, a developer who contributes to open source, they are far ahead of many other developers because imagine if you're in the college and there are developers who don't have any experience in the market, but one developer starts contributing to open source. That gives this developer a great advantage, right? Because it shows that this developer has a lot more maturity than the other developer who has no experience and sometimes is complaining, oh, I have no experience and they don't accept me for jobs. But like for career, it's excellent. Even for very experienced developers, if you put on your curriculum, if you put on your LinkedIn profile that you, for example, contributed to Kubernetes or Moki or Spring or I don't know, any technology that are highly used in the market, that makes the total difference to get a job and to get the best positions. That shows a lot also about discipline and proactivity. And it's something that the companies look for a lot in developers. Wow.
It's good to know you agree how important it is.
It is. It is so important. Like, for example, Red Hat. Red Hat, they will hire you, like in most cases, if you contribute to their open source project.
And something I learned just from talking to developers, they say that even contributing to the documentation is helpful. If you read the documentation and you don't have much programming experience, like if there are sections you don't understand, like making a contribution and basically asking them to explain it more clearly, it actually does help.
Yeah, it helps because you start small, contributing to open source. Because if you try to create a huge feature all of a sudden in big projects such as Spring or Kubernetes, chances are that it's going to be rejected. Why? Because if people don't know you, why they should bother accepting a big feature? So first thing when developers are starting to contribute source is to start small. So starting on the documentation, it's a great strategy because firstly, your pull request will be accepted. Secondly, you're going to learn about the project. And it's going to be a lot easier as well for you to contribute with bigger things. Because if people already trust you, they will accept big features as well. When we are contributing to open source projects, you have to be humble, right? Start by the documentation, start by doing, I don't know, maybe some small code refactorings or some small unit tests or look for, there's some open source projects that have some labels like beginner, right? Start from the beginner labels, right? You don't need, the worst thing you can do when you're contributing to open source is to be arrogant and say, oh, I know everything. So it's much better to be humble and say, okay, I'm going to start from documentation. I'm going to start doing the things nobody wants to do.
I think this is something they don't teach in schools, which it's important. And to get a job, it's important for your career too. So I think with the this project I'm working on with the Linux Foundation, our hope is to get this information out to more students.
Yeah. And being humble with the job is also very important because sometimes you're going to need help from our experienced developers and sometimes not, but sometimes you will. And because when we are humble, we're able to learn. If we are arrogant and if we think we know everything, we are on our way to become obsolete. So that's a very important mindset, like to have the kind of the white belt mentality so that you are always learning. It doesn't mean that like you're gonna be not confident on your skills. It just means that we are aware that we have to be always learning. Others have always something to teach us. Anyone.
Yeah, I think so. I guess sometimes I talk to like developers and adults, and just given my age and how I look, sometimes I feel like people aren't really listening to what I say, which is interesting. I think that just goes into being humble and listening to people for who they are.
Exactly. And yeah, that goes both ways for everyone. Right. And you have so much experience, so much edge. That's definitely like many people, many adults, many even experienced developers can learn a lot from you. And the opposite is also true. Sometimes a junior developer, intermediate, or a senior developer can teach us many things as well. Very good. Cassandra, what do you recommend for the career building energy into kids and the next generation?
I think it's important that I know this because when I go to conferences, a lot of the talks are about building your own career. But I think it's also important to place some value in, I want to say, like building your kid's career early on. It'll contribute to their career in the future. And I think, I mean, for me, I'm not exactly in the workplace yet, but I watched my dad raise me, and he has always balanced doing his career and raising me and introducing me to technology in fun ways. One example where he incorporated me into his career, but technology is, I think when I was in fourth grade, that was the first time he took me on a business trip with him. He had to speak at a conference, a developer conference in China, and I think Taiwan too. That was my first exposure to like seeing conferences and adults doing technology in the workplace. And I thought it was like an interesting learning experience. And that was my first experience, but he continued bringing me to conferences. And I also got more involved with conferences because I was actually teaching kids workshops there. I went to JFocus like really early on in my life. I think might have been 2015. That's like 10 years ago. And I was teaching a workshop at JFocus for kids there. Say, even so I wasn't old enough to really go to a session and understand what they're saying, I was able to participate in my own way and contribute. So I think balancing career and kids, I think a good way to go about it is showing your kids the positive part of your career in technology. I think a lot of kids, their idea of technology is their parent being on the keyboard ignoring them and staring at
Yeah.
code. So I feel like you don't tell your kids to stare at code all day like you do. You show them like maybe the results of technology, the games, the fun part. I mean, it's all about creativity. I think that's my take on it.
Yeah, I really like that for parents to balance their careers, to teach their kids about technology, to get them involved and exposed to conferences. If they can do that's even better. I really like the initiatives on those conferences to have special sessions for kids because that enables the parents to take their kids as well and so that they can learn those technologies like you did. So that's, I really like the advice. And yeah, that's for you, parent who has kids and take them to conferences and help them learn technologies and simply show them that it's fun. And that's the future. Everyone knows technology is the future.
Kids are the future too. Goes together.
Kids, yeah, more fundamentally, kids are the future. Definitely.
Yeah, so I really hope that by writing this Raising Young Coders book, I can inspire more parents to get their kids involved with technology.
For sure. Can you show the book again?
Yeah. So this is the Raising Young Coders book. I published it with A Press, and you can find it on both the Springer site and on Amazon. I also have a 20% off discount code, which we can link to this video. Also, as a bonus, the book is actually in full color. I was really
Oh,
surprised when I received this in the mail. So, with the block coding parts and some of the project demonstrations, just makes it pop out so much that I actually do believe that the physical copy is nice.
it is so much better. Yeah, wow. That's amazing. I'm gonna leave the link there in the description of the video with the coupon so that you have the 20% discount so that you can start right now motivating your kid to have fun with technology because we know that it's an area that is growing and motivate your kid to have an amazing career like Cassandra.
Thank you very much for having me on the show today and giving
Thank you,
me this opportunity to give this message to a lot of parents.
thank you so much, Cassandra. It was my pleasure to have you here and I learned a lot from you and it was very educative, like everything you said, like about bringing more kids to coding. We talked a lot about diversity as well, about your experience. I'm sure that all the parents and the kids and Java developers in general who are watching us, they for sure enjoyed a lot. Cassandra, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And it was a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure and a privilege. Thank you so much. Cheers.